Before we dive into tonight's tale, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want more creepy stories that will keep you up at night. Black Hollow wasn't the kind of place you'd find on a postcard. It was the kind of town that seemed to exist only in the periphery of the world, tucked away at the edge of a forest so dense and ancient, it felt less like nature and more like a living, breathing entity. The trees here didn't just grow, they loomed, their gnarled branches twisting skyward like claws frozen mid-reach, as if they'd been caught trying to snatch something from the heavens. The air was thick with the stench of wet rot, a smell so pervasive it clung to your clothes, your skin, even the back of your throat. It was the kind of odor you stopped noticing after a while, but it never really left you. The town itself was small, barely a few hundred souls clinging to the edge of civilization. Kids still shrieked and played in the streets, their laughter echoing off the cracked sidewalks, while adults exchanged hollow smiles and idle chatter. Life went on as it always does, even in a place like Black Hollow. But beneath the surface there was something wrong. Something that didn't belong. The forest wasn't just a forest. It pulsed with a kind of energy, something older than time, something ravenous. The townsfolk didn't talk about it much, not out loud anyway, but they felt it. They all felt it. Now, the sheriff of this place, Ellen Carter, she's the kind of woman you don't mess with. Tough as nails, but not in that loud, barking orders way. More like she's been through hell and crawled back with a quiet kind of steel. Ellen's got this shadow hanging over her, and it's got a name, Emily. Her little girl, 10 years old, back 5 Octobers ago. It was Halloween, the whole town out for this festival they throw every year. Pumpkins carved up, kids in costumes, the works. Ellen was there too, keeping an eye on things, probably sipping coffee from a thermos. Emily was running around with the other kids, her laugh cutting through the crisp night air. Then, sometime between the hayride and the bonfire, she just wandered off, toward the woods. Ellen turned her back for maybe a minute, checking on some drunk guy hassling the pie stand, and when she looked again, Emily was gone. They searched for days, combed every inch of that forest, but it was like the trees swallowed her whole. No trace, no nothing. Ever since, Ellen's been hollowed out, like someone took a knife and carved out everything soft. She still walks the town, badge pinned to her chest, but you can see it in her eyes. She's waiting for something to break her all over again. Those woods? She can't even get close without her hands starting to shake, like her body remembers what her mind won't let go of. So it's October 31st again, 5 years to the day since Emily vanished. Ellen was at the station, cleaning her shotgun. It was a ritual of sorts, something to keep her hands busy and her mind off the date. The station was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Outside, the sun was sinking low, casting long shadows across the town. And then it happened. Every battery-powered device in the station, phones, handheld radios, even the old clock on the wall, erupted in a cacophony of screeching static. Ellen dropped the cleaning rod, her heart slamming against her ribs as the noise filled the room. Emergency alert. Seek shelter immediately. Do not look outside. Do not make a sound. They are coming. The voice was distorted, almost mechanical, but there was something beneath it, something wet and guttural that made Ellen's skin crawl. The message repeated, the words flickering across the screens of the devices, but something was wrong. The letters were jagged, uneven, like they'd been scrawled in blood. COMNIG, the screen read, the letters twisting and warping as if they were alive. The message rasped out 3 times, each repetition growing hoarser, more strained, until it finally cut off into silence. The lights flickered once, twice, and then died completely, plunging the station into darkness. All she can hear now is her own breathing, quick and shallow, echoing off the concrete walls. Ellen doesn't waste a second. She's up, chair scraping the floor loud enough to make her wince, her pulse thudding in her ears like a drum. She snatches the handheld radio off the desk, thumbing the button even though she knows the power's gone. Maybe it'll still work on its battery. Her other hand grabs the shotgun, fingers curling tight around the grip, the cold metal grounding her just enough to keep her head straight. She steps over to the window, boots thumping on the worn linoleum, and peers out through the blinds. The street's pitch black now, the festival lights snuffed out, not a soul in sight. The woods loom at the edge of town, a wall of shadow that seems closer than it was an hour ago, like it's leaning in. Ellen's gut twists hard. Whatever's out there, it's not a prank, not a storm, not anything she's seen in her 20 years wearing that badge. Her heart's hammering so loud she can feel it in her throat, and she mutters under her breath, "This ain't human, no way in hell." She swings away from the window, the blinds rattling shut, and heads for the door, shotgun slung over her shoulder, radio clutched like a lifeline. She's got to get out there, see what's happening, because whatever's coming, it's already on the move. So Ellen's out the station door, shotgun slung over her shoulder, radio in her grip, the alert still buzzing in her head like a bad dream she can't shake. She's moving fast down Main, boots thumping the pavement, the dark swallowing everything beyond her flashlight's beam. Black Hollow's gone quiet, too quiet, until a scream cuts through, sharp and quick, then snuffs out. She swings the light toward it, catching the edge of a house, curtains twitching, but before she can decide what to do, the town starts losing it. Folks are scrambling now. A door slams down the street. Pete from the hardware store yelling at his wife, "Lock it, lock it!" The bolt sliding home with a heavy clunk. Next door, an old guy chuckles, nervous. "Kids messing with us." But it fades fast when another scream rips out, closer this time. A mom's voice cracks, "Inside, now!" As a screen door bangs shut, the scrape of a table dragging across her floor echoing out. Fear's got everybody by the throat, and it's spreading like a brush fire. Then there's Old Man Harris, the town drunk, holed up in that rickety shack where the road butts up against the woods. He's a mess, yellow teeth, greasy hair, always stinking of booze. Ellen spots him as she rounds the corner, maybe 50 yards off, his porch light flickering like it's on its last legs. He's lurching out the door, the wood groaning under his boots, a cigarette pinched between his fingers. "Ain't no boogeyman gonna get me." He croaks, voice rough as sandpaper, flicking his lighter with a shaky hand. The flame sparks up, catching the lines of his weathered face as he puffs the smoke to life, the red tip glowing in the dark. Ellen's about to shout, "Harris, get inside!" when the woods cut her off. This low, wet hiss rolls out like someone choking on mud. "We see you," it gurgles, close and thick, right at Harris's back. He stiffens, cigarette wobbling. "Who's there?" spilling out in a slur. Before he can turn, the shadows hit, black and slick, bursting from the trees, tendrils whipping through the air. They snag him fast, wrapping his arms, his legs, and start tearing. His skin rips back in wet strips, a sick, tearing sound filling the night, ribs cracking open one by one like dry twigs. His screams half-formed, choking into a gurgle as his jaw snaps wide, the cigarette dropping into the blood pooling at his feet. Those tendrils dig into his face, yanking his eyes out, red sockets staring blind as he collapses, a twitching heap on the porch. Ellen's running now, flashlight shaking in one hand, shotgun swinging in the other. She hits the edge of his yard, boots skidding, and yells into the radio, "Inside now! Everybody inside!" Her voice hoarse over the static. She sweeps the light over Harris, what's left of him, and her gut twists. Blood still dripping off the porch edge, plinking into the dirt. Neighbors peek out, Mrs. Delaney gasps, slamming her window shut. A kid down the block whimpers, muffled behind glass. Ellen swings the beam to the woods. Nothing but trees now, still and dark. But the screams are picking up, rolling through the streets like a wave, one house sparking the next. The watchers got their taste, and the town's coming apart. She doesn't stop to stare. Ellen swings the shotgun up, steadying it, and takes off toward the center of town, radio crackling uselessly in her hand. Her breath's fogging in the cold, boots pounding a steady beat as she moves. Harris is gone, but there's got to be people left to pull together. She's got her sights on the library, big, solid, smack in the middle of Black Hollow. It's this old brick beast, 2 stories of chipped red walls and narrow windows, the kind of place that stood through floods and fights and everything else this town's thrown at it. She knows it inside out, spent last summer hauling water jugs and sandbags in there when the river swelled up, got that generator purring in the basement to keep the lights on. It's not just a hunch, it's the only spot she trusts to hold up against whatever's out there. She skids around the corner onto Elm, the library's silhouette looming ahead, its front steps cracked but steady. Her radio's still got a flicker of juice. She jams the button down, voice barking out, "Library, move." It's sharp, cutting through the static, but halfway through move, the damn thing gives up, crackling into silence. She curses under her breath, "Piece of junk," and tosses it into her pocket, not slowing down. Out there in the dark, most of Black Hollow's missing the message. Screams are drowning everything now, houses lighting up with panic as those shadows start picking people off, one by one. Ellen hits the library's double doors hard, shoulder slamming them open with a hollow bang that echoes inside. The air's stale, smelling of old paper and dust, and the generator's hum kicks in low from downstairs, a steady rumble she can feel through the floorboards. She swings her flashlight around. Rows of shelves stretch out, shadowy and still, the front desk sitting empty where Clara usually parks herself. Ellen's voice bounces off the walls. "Anyone here? Move it!" Not yelling, just loud enough to carry. Her boots squeak on the tile as she strides in, shotgun still up, eyes scanning every corner. The place feels like a tomb, but it's not empty for long. People start trickling in, ragged, shaken, drawn by her voice or just dumb luck after catching that half-assed radio call. First through the door's Marcus, this wiry guy from the edge of town, all elbows and sharp edges. He's got a hunting rifle slung across his back, barrel glinting in the dim light, and his face is tight, like he hasn't slept in days. Ellen knows him, lives out by the woods, keeps to himself since his brother got torn up by a bear a few years back. She was there that day, found the kid's body all ripped open, Marcus sobbing his name into the dirt. Now he's stomping in, boots caked with mud, muttering, "Woods have been hungry lately," like it's some warning nobody asked for. He leans against a shelf, rifle still close, eyes darting to the windows like he's waiting for something to crash through. Lila's next, slipping in with this little toy truck gripped tight, her kid Tommy's, the one who vanished last week by the trees. "Ellen, what's going on?" she asks, voice shaky, eyes darting. Ellen just points her toward the back. "Stay put." Ethan follows, this journalist guy who's been poking around town, pen already scratching in his notebook. "Heard you on the radio," he says, stepping over a tipped chair. Clara's already here, the librarian, keys jingling as she comes out from the desk. "I was locking up," she says, quiet. "Something's down there." She nods at the basement stairs. A dozen others stumble in. Jim from the store, a kid in a hoodie, Ruth with her shawl, hustling up the stairs to the second floor, muttering, "What's out there?" "Harris is dead." Ellen's about to tell him to hush when a thump hits the door, hard, wet. She swings the flashlight over, a severed hand, fingers bent, slides down the glass, leaving a red smear. Claw marks rake the brick outside, fresh and deep. "Clara, basement," Ellen snaps, heading for the stairs, shotgun up. They follow, Marcus, Lila, Ethan, Clara, boots and shoes clomping down the wooden steps, the generator's hum getting louder, vibrating the concrete. Basement's cold, a single bulb buzzing overhead. Clara kneels by a shelf, dragging out this rusted metal box, her hands trembling as she pops the lock. Inside's a journal, old, leather cracked, pages yellowed and curling. "It's his," she says, voice barely above a whisper, from 73. Ellen takes it, flipping it open, her flashlight catching the faded ink. It's Clara's husband's writing, messy, urgent, going on about something called the hollowing. Back in 1973, some townsfolk tried a ritual out in the woods, thinking they'd call up guardians to watch over Black Hollow. They got something else, the Watchers, these blind, eyeless things, all slick and oily, hunting by sound. The pages talk about how they mimic voices, dead folks, loved ones, in this wet, layered drone that gets in your head. Rules are scratched in the margins. Stay quiet, don't look out, trust no one. They can worm into your mind if you let them. Ellen's eyes narrow, her finger tracing the words, and she looks up at the group. Marcus leaning in, Lila shivering, Ethan's pen pausing for once. "This is what's killing us," she says, voice cutting through the basement's hum like a blade. She shuts the journal with a snap, handing it back to Clara, and starts up the stairs, the others trailing her. The generator's rumble follows them, steady for now, but those scratches outside are getting louder, clawing at the walls like nails on a chalkboard. Ellen's already thinking, rules or not, they've got to hold this place, figure out what's next, because whatever's out there, it's closing in fast. Ellen's boots are still echoing on the basement stairs as she leads the group back up. the journal's weight settling heavy in her mind, those rules about silence and mimicry burning into her thoughts. The library's main room feels tighter now, the air thick with dust and the faint tang of rust from that generator humming below. The dozen survivors, or what's left of them, are scattered around, some slumped against the shelves, others pacing near the windows, their shadows flickering in the dim light of a couple battery lanterns Ellen dug out from under the desk. Marcus is posted by the front door, rifle propped against his shoulder, his jaw working like he's chewing on something he can't spit out. Ethan's leaning on a table, scribbling in that damn notebook, muttering to himself. Eyeless, sound hunters, like he's piecing together a puzzle. Clara's hovering near the basement steps, clutching the journal to her chest, her keys jingling faintly every time she shifts her weight. Lila's off to the side, sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor, that little toy truck gripped tight in her hands, her thumbs rubbing over its chipped red paint, like it's the only thing keeping her here. The room's quiet, too quiet, except for the generator's low growl vibrating up through the boards and the occasional creak of the building settling. Ellen's pacing near the center, shotgun resting in the crook of her arm, her flashlight tucked into her belt now, the beam off to save the battery. She's eyeballing the group, counting heads, still 12 for now, when Lila suddenly jerks upright, her whole body going rigid like someone flipped a switch. Her head snaps toward the nearest window, a tall, narrow thing with warped glass, and her breath hitches loud enough to make Ethan look up from his notes. "Tommy?" she whispers, voice small and cracked, barely audible over the hum downstairs. Then it comes, his voice, clear as a bell but all wrong. "Mommy, it hurts." It's this wet, pleading whimper, like a kid caught in a trap, but it's layered, a dozen little echoes twisting over each other, dripping with something thick and unnatural. It's clawing right at Lila's heart, sharp as a knife, and you can see it in her face. Grief lighting her up like a flare. She's on her feet before anyone can blink, stumbling toward the window, the truck still clutched in one hand, the other reaching out like she can grab whatever's calling her. "Tommy, baby, I'm coming," she chokes out, her voice breaking into a sob as her sneakers scuff the floor. Ellen's across the room in a heartbeat, dropping the shotgun with a clatter and lunging for her. She grabs Lila's arm, yanking her back hard, and slams her down onto the floorboards. Lila's knees hit with a dull thud, her elbow banging a shelf, books toppling with a soft thump. "It's them," Ellen snaps, voice low and fierce, leaning in close so Lila can't miss it. "Journal says they mimic. Don't you dare fall for it." Lila's thrashing under her grip, tears streaking her face. "No, it's him. It's my boy." But Ellen holds firm, pinning her shoulders, her own breath coming fast now. Outside, the window groans, the glass bulging inward like it's breathing, bowing under some weight nobody can see. That voice splits again. "Why won't you save me?" Warped and desperate, bouncing off the walls, and a slick black tendril slithers across the pane, leaving a smeared trail of slime that drips slow and thick, glinting in the lantern light. Ellen's eyes flick to it, then back to Lila. "Shut it now!" And Lila bites her lip hard, choking down the sobs, her whole body shaking as she curls into herself. The tendril lingers, pressing at the glass with a faint squeak, then pulls back, slow, deliberate, when no sound answers it. The window snaps back into place with a faint pop, and the voice fades, leaving just the generator's hum and Lila's ragged breathing. Ellen lets go, rocking back on her heels, the ref wiping sweat off her forehead with the back of her hand. She grabs the shotgun again, standing slow, her eyes locked on that window, clean now, like nothing happened. "Stay sharp," she mutters, mostly to herself, but it's loud enough for Marcus to nod, his grip tightening on his rifle. The room's tense, everyone holding their breath, when a new sound cuts through. Upstairs, this low, broken sob. It's Jim, the shopkeeper, a big guy with a gray beard, hunched near the railing. His hands are pressed to his ears, shaking, and he's mumbling, "Mary, Mary, honey," his voice cracking like he's about to lose it. Ellen spins toward him. "Jim, no," but it's too late. His wife's voice floats down, soft and sweet. "Jim, I'm outside, let me in." Wet and layered, just like Tommy's, unmistakable now. Jim's up, lumbering toward the front door, his boots stomping loud on the creaky floor. "Hang on, babe, I'm coming," he calls, voice thick with tears, reaching for the handle. Ellen's shouting, "Stop, damn it!" But he's too far gone, yanking the door open with a groan of old hinges. The shadows are waiting, black and fast, pouring through the gap like water breaking a dam. Tendrils snap out, wrapping his arms, his chest, and he barely gets a scream out, just this choked grunt as they rip into him. His shirt tears first, then his skin, splitting in red sprays, flesh peeling back as they shred him right there in the doorway. Blood splatters the floor, hot and coppery, hitting the widow Ruth in the face. She shrieks, scrambling back, her shawl tangling in a chair. Jim's body drops, a mangled mess, half in, half out, the door slamming shut on its own with a bang as the shadows pull back. Ellen's standing there, shotgun up now, barrel shaking just a hair as she stares at Jim's remains, 8 left now, counting fast in her head. Upstairs, Ruth's whimpering, the teens cursing under his breath. Oh man, over and over. Marcus steps up beside Ellen, voice low, told you they're hungry. Ethan's pen scratching again, faster now, his glasses fogging up with sweat. Clara's still by the stairs, journal trembling in her hands, whispering, it's just like he said. Lila's on the floor, curled tight, silent sobs racking her shoulders. The toy truck slick with her sweat, its little wheels glinting wet in the lantern glow. Ellen swings the shotgun down, resting it against her leg, and wipes her hand across her mouth, tasting salt and grit. No more noise, she says, voice hard, eyes flicking to the windows, those scratches outside picking up again, sharper now, like something's testing the walls. She's already moving toward the stairs, waving the group back down, 'cause whatever's coming, it's not waiting much longer. Ellen's got the group hustling back down the basement stairs, her shotgun swinging in her grip as she leads the way, the barrel still warm from those useless shots at Jim's killers. The library's main floor is a ghost town now. Just overturned chairs and a smear of blood where Jim went down, the air thick with that coppery stink. Downstairs, the generator's rattling harder, this uneven chug-chug that shakes the concrete walls, throwing little puffs of dust loose from the ceiling. The single bulb swings overhead, casting shadows that dance across the 8 survivors. Ellen, Marcus, Lila, Ethan, Clara, and the 3 upstairs stragglers. Ruth the widow, the hoodie kid, and a wiry guy named Dale who runs the gas station. They're all crammed in tight, the basement feeling smaller than it did an hour ago, the hum of that machine buzzing in their ears like a trapped fly. Ellen's pacing near the bottom of the stairs, boots scuffing the gritty floor, her flashlight clipped back on her belt, beam off to save juice. She's chewing her lip, eyes flicking between the group and the journal. Clara's still clutching, those rules, silence, no looking, looping in her head. The shadows are louder now, gnashing at the walls upstairs, a steady scratch that's getting under everybody's skin. Marcus is leaning against a metal shelf, rifle propped beside him, his bony fingers tapping the stock like he's itching to move. He's been quiet since Jim went down, but now he straightens up, voice cutting through the generator's drone, low and rough. We're meat here, he growls, spitting the words like they taste bad. My cabin's steel, got traps set up, tripwires from hunting. We fight, not sit. He locks eyes with Ellen, daring her to argue, his jaw tight like a coiled spring. Ellen stops pacing, turning to face him, her scowl deep enough to carve lines in her face. Leaving's a damn risk, Marcus. You saw what happened up there, she says, voice sharp, nodding toward the stairs where Jim's blood's still drying. She's not sold, every instinct screaming to hunker down, stick to the rules, but Marcus doesn't back off. He steps closer, boots thudding, leaning in so she can smell the sweat on him. I've skinned bears out there, Ellen. I know how to bleed 'em. Whatever's hunting us, it bleeds too. His voice is steady, almost cocky, and it's got a pull to it, like he's promising something she can't quite grab. Lila's head snaps up from where she's crouched, knees pulled tight, the toy truck pressed to her chest. Her voice is shaky, barely holding together. Anything but waiting. Please, Ellen, I can't just sit here. Her eyes are wet, pleading, and it hits Ellen like a punch. She knows that look, the same one she saw in the mirror after Emily vanished. Ethan's over by the wall, pen scratching slower now, but he nods, pushing his glasses up with a fingertip. Makes sense. Fortify. Take a stand, he says, calm like he's narrating his own damn story. Clara's quieter, standing by the generator, her fingers white-knuckled around that journal, but she doesn't argue, just stares at Marcus like she's weighing him. Upstairs, Ruth whispers, "We gotta do something." her shawl rustling as she shifts, and Dale mutters, "Yeah, let's move," his voice hoarse from chain smoking. The kid just nods, hoodie pulled low, too scared to talk. Ellen's jaw clenches, her hand tightening on the shotgun. She doesn't like it. Leaving breaks every rule in that book, but the group's desperation's pressing in, and that generator's rattling like it's on its last legs anyway. "Fine," she snaps, voice hard, "but no noise, go quiet, or we're dead." She points at Marcus, Lila, Ethan, and Clara. "You four with me. Rest of you hold here." Ruth, Dale, and the kids stay put, shuffling back toward the shelves. They're breathing loud in the tight space as Ellen leads the five out, up the stairs, and into the night. They slip out the library's back door, a rusty thing that creaks just enough to make Ellen wince, her shotgun up and ready. The air's cold, biting at their faces, and the town's a graveyard now. No screams, just an eerie hush broken by the faint rustle of leaves in the woods. Marcus takes point, moving fast but quiet, his boots soft on the dirt as he leads them down a side street toward his cabin, half a mile out. Lila's right behind, clutching that truck, her sneakers scuffing every few steps. She's trying to be silent, but her hands are shaking too hard. Ethan's next, notebook tucked away now, his breath puffing out in quick bursts. Clara's at the rear with Ellen, journal under her arm, keys jangling faintly until Ellen shoots her a look and she stuffs them in her pocket. The cabin looms up after 10 tense minutes, a squat fortress of weathered boards and steel plates, bolts gleaming dully in the moonlight. Marcus built it himself, a paranoid bunker after his brother got torn apart, and it shows. Windows boarded tight, door reinforced like a vault. He kneels by the perimeter, fingers brushing a thin wire strung low, a row of tiny bells glinting along it. "Set these up months ago," he mutters, voice barely a whisper. "After the bear, lets me hear anything coming." He's tugging at one, testing the tension when it hits, his brother's voice rasping out from the trees, "You let me rot." It's low, rough, layered with that wet drone, like a throat full of mud calling his name. Marcus freezes, his hand jerking back from the wire, rifle swinging up fast. "You're dead," he spits, voice sharp, and pulls the trigger. The shot booms loud, splitting the night, the bells clanging wild as the wire snaps under a stray spark. Ellen's right there, shotgun raised. Marcus no late. Shadows surge from the woods, black and slick, tendrils whipping out like ropes. She blasts at them, the recoil jarring her shoulder, buckshot tearing into the dark, too damn fast. They hit Marcus hard, pinning his arms, his legs, and he's still swinging the rifle when a tendril worms into his mouth, splitting his jaw with a wet crack. Another hooks his gut, yanking out loops of steaming insides, blood splashing hot on the dirt. He's gurgling, alive, eyes wide as they peel him apart, flesh raining down in chunks, the bells jingling faintly under the mess. Ellen fires again, shotgun roaring, but it's useless. The shadows are a blur, shredding him in seconds. "Back now!" she barks, grabbing Lila's arm, dragging her as the nurse stumbles, truck slipping in her sweaty grip. Ethan's already bolting, Clara right beside him, her breath hitching loud. They haul ass back to the library, Ellen's boots pounding, blood sticky on her soles from Marcus's ruin. The back door's still cracked open. They pile in, slamming it shut with a thud, shoving a shelf against it, wood scraping the floor. Upstairs, it's quiet, too quiet. Ellen swings her flashlight up the steps, beam catching wet smears on the walls, the floor. Ruth, Dale, and the kid are gone, just streaks of red where they stood. The generator's sputtering now, a weak, uneven chug as they barricade the door, the strain of the night wearing it thin. Ellen's chest heaves, her voice rasping out, "No more runs," as she leans against the wall, shotgun trembling in her grip, the scratches outside picking up like a drumbeat. Ellen's shoving the basement door shut behind them, the wood scraping against the frame with a groan as she throws her weight into it, shotgun still dangling from her shoulder. The four of them, Ellen, Lila, Ethan, Clara, tumble down the narrow stairs, boots and sneakers thumping on the creaky steps, the air hitting them like a slap, cold, damp, smelling of mold and motor oil from that generator chugging in the corner. It's faltering now, the hum stuttering unevenly, a low growl that catches every few beats before grinding on, shaking the concrete floor under their feet. The bulb overhead flickers with it, swinging on its cord, throwing jittery shadows across the walls, long, jagged shapes that make Lila flinch, her toy truck clutched tight against her chest, knuckles white around its edges. They hit the bottom, Ellen first, her boots scuffing to a stop on the gritty floor. She swings around, flashlight back in her hand now, beam slicing through the dimness, catching the sweat on Ethan's glasses, the tear streaks cutting through the dirt on Lila's face. Clara's right behind, her steps slower, the journal pressed against her ribs like it's holding her together. The basement's a mess, boxes stacked crooked against the walls, old metal shelves sagging under dusty files, the generator hulking in the back, its exhaust pipe rattling faintly as it spits out a thin haze. Ellen's breath still heaving, fogging in the chill, and she leans the shotgun against a shelf, wiping her hands on her jeans, Marcus's blood smearing red-brown across the denim. "Check the stairs," she snaps at Ethan, voice rough, nodding toward the door they just came through. He nods quick, scrambling back up a few steps, his shoes squeaking as he peers through the crack. Nothing but dark up there, and those scratches still clawing at the walls, louder now, impatient. Lila's sinking down against the wall, sliding slow till she's sitting, knees pulled up, the truck pressed to her forehead like she's praying to it. Her breathing's shaky, little gasps that echo in the tight space, and she's muttering, "Tommy! Oh God, Tommy!" under her breath, over and over, rocking just enough to make her shadow sway under the bulb. Ellen glances at her, jaw tight, but doesn't say anything. There's no fixing that kind of hurt right now. She turns to Clara instead, who's just standing there, staring at the floor, her shoulders slumped like the fight's gone out of her. The journal's still in her hands, fingers trembling as they trace the cracked leather cover, and Ellen steps closer, boots thudding soft. "Clara," she says, voice low but firm, "what the hell are we dealing with? That book. Talk." Clara doesn't look up at first, just keeps staring, her breath hitching like she's about to choke on it. Then she crumples, folding down onto her knees with a soft thud, the journal slipping to the floor in front of her, pages fanning open. "My husband did this," she says, voice breaking, barely above a whisper, her hands pressing into the concrete like it's holding her up. "He tried the hollowing, thought it'd guard us, keep Black Hollow safe." She's shaking now, her words spilling out faster, raw and jagged. "He fed it his blood, out there in the woods, said it'd call something good. It didn't. It ate him, those things took him, piece by piece. I hid it, Ellen. I thought he'd gone mad, raving about shadows and voices. I was scared they'd blame me, lock me up, or worse." Her voice cracks hard on that last bit, and she drags a sleeve across her face, smearing tears into the grime. Ellen crouches down, picking up the journal, her fingers brushing the stained pages, yellowed, curling, ink smudged with what looks like old blood. She flips it open, flashlight steady in her other hand, the beam catching a sketch of some twisted symbol, then a page scrawled with tight, frantic writing. Clara's still talking, voice wobbling as she points at it. "There's a counter ritual, right there, see? Lifeblood to seal them. He tried it once, cut his arm deep, pushed him back for a night, kept him quiet. But they waited, Ellen. They waited till he was alone, then took him screaming." She's sobbing now, quiet but messy, her shoulders hunching as she wraps her arms around herself, rocking back on her heels. Ethan's back down the stairs now, stepping light, his notebook out again, pen hovering over the page. He's been listening, and his voice cuts in, sharp and pissed. "You let this happen?" He snarls, glasses glinting as he leans toward Clara, his free hand balling into a fist. "You knew about this crap and kept it quiet while they're tearing us apart up there?" His words hang heavy, and Lila looks up, eyes wide, her truck slipping an inch in her sweaty grip. Clara flinches like he hit her, shaking her head fast. No. I didn't believe it, Ethan." She chokes out, tears dripping onto the floor, plinking soft against the concrete. "Not till Harris, not till I saw what they did to him. I thought it was just stories, his crazy stories." Her voice trails off, swallowed by a sob, and she presses her hands to her face, fingers digging into her cheeks. Ellen's still flipping through the journal, her flashlight catching the words, silence, blood, seal, and she snaps it shut with a dry smack, standing up slow, her knees popping from the crouch. "All right," she says, voice steady but hard, tucking the book under her arm. "4 of us left, that's it." She's counting in her head. Marcus gone, Jim gone, the 3 upstairs smeared into nothing. Her, Lila, Ethan, Clara, that's all she's got. The generator's hum falters again, a weak stutter that makes the bulb flicker, and she glances at it, cursing under her breath. Hold on, damn it! Upstairs, those scratches are picking up. A steady scrape that's closer now, like nails dragging slow across the brick, impatient and hungry. Ellen swings the shotgun back into her hands, gripping it tight, her eyes flicking to the stairs. Whatever Clara's husband woke up, it's circling tighter, and she's already running the counter-ritual through her mind, blood and all, as the basement walls start to feel like a trap closing in. The basement's air is choking thick now, that moldy damp mixing with the faint gasoline whiff from the generator as Ellen stands there, shotgun tight in her hands, the journal's counter-ritual burning in her brain. The four of them, Ellen, Lila, Ethan, Clara, are huddled close, the concrete walls pressing in, sweat and fear soaking their clothes. The generator's hum's been faltering for a while, that uneven chug getting weaker, and now it gives one last cough, a hard, rattling hack like an old man's dying breath, before it quits. The bulb overhead blinks out with a soft pop, plunging them into a black so deep it's like the room swallowed them whole. Lila gasps sharp, the toy truck clattering against her chest as she grips it tighter, and Ethan's muttering, oh hell," under his breath, his notebook rustling as he fumbles it in the dark. Clara's frozen, the journal still in her hands, her breathing quick and shallow, barely audible over the sudden silence. Then it hits, the sound of wood splintering upstairs, a loud crack as the library doors give way, shards hitting the floor like hail. Ellen swings the shotgun up, her flashlight flicking on, beam cutting through the black, catching the stairs where dust is drifting down from the chaos above. The shadows are in, and they're hissing, low, wet, like air bubbling through a clogged drain. Then comes the voice, soft and small, slicing right through Ellen's gut. Mommy, I'm cold. It's Emily, clear as that Halloween night 5 years back, but twisted, layered with a dozen little echoes, pleading and wrong. Lila whimpers, no, curling tighter against the wall, but Ellen's already moving, her boots scuffing fast as she steps toward a workbench in the corner, the flashlight beam bouncing off tools and junk. She drops the shotgun on the bench with a heavy clunk, grabbing a rusty utility knife from a drawer, blade dull but sharp enough, glinting faint in the light. Clara, she barks, voice hard. You know it. Start. Clara's shaking her head, tears streaking her face, but she stumbles forward, dropping to her knees, the journal thumping open on the floor. Ellen yanks her jacket off, tossing it aside, the zipper rasping loud, and pulls her shirt up, exposing her chest, pale, scarred from years on the job. She grips the knife, steadying it with both hands, and starts carving, deep, ragged lines, tracing the runes from that stained page. The blade bites in, skin splitting with a wet tear, blood welling up fast, dripping down her ribs in thick, dark trails. She grits her teeth, a low growl rumbling out. Come on, as the pain flares hot, pooling red on the concrete below. Clara's chanting now, voice cracking as she reads from the journal, her flashlight trembling in one hand, the beam jittering across the words. Old, guttural syllables she's half guessing, stumbling over them like a kid with a tongue twister. Varus, Sangus. It's shaky, breaking every few beats as sobs choke her up. But she keeps going, rocking back and forth. Ethan's staring wide-eyed. Ellen, what the hell? But she cuts him off, snarling, Shut it! The scratches upstairs turn to bangs now, the shadows spilling down the stairs, a black tide hissing Emily's voice again. Mommy, please. Ellen snatches the shotgun back up, blood slick on her hands, staining the grip, and swings it toward the steps, her flashlight clattering to the floor, beam spinning wild. She roars, Eat me, bastards! Voice booming off the walls as she pumps the shotgun and fires, once, twice, the blasts deafening in the tight space, buckshot tearing into the swarm. The shadows surge, tendrils whipping out, black and gleaming like wet rope. One slams into her chest, knocking her back against the bench, tools crash to the floor, a hammer bouncing off her boot. Another pierces her eye, a sharp, blinding sting, blood spraying hot across her face. She swings the gun wild, firing again, the recoil jarring her arm, but a tendril hooks her throat, ripping through with a wet crunch. Her scream cuts to a gurgle, blood bubbling out as she drops. They drag her down, her body hitting the concrete with a dull thud, twitching as they burrow in, tearing at her chest, her arms, her legs snapping under the weight. Clara's still chanting, voice breaking hard, Sangus, seal. And the shadows freeze mid-strike, tendrils quivering, then melt into the floor with a wet, snarling slurp, sinking into cracks like oil down a drain, bound by the ritual's shaky power. Silence slams down, thick and heavy, the air tasting of blood and rust. Lila's sobbing loud now, rocking against the wall, truck pressed to her mouth, muffling the sound. Ethan's panting, glasses crooked, notebook forgotten on the floor. Clara's slumped over the journal, her flashlight rolling away, beam fading weak against the wall. Ellen's gone, just a crumpled heap, blood pooling wide around her, soaking into the concrete, her shotgun lying bent beside her, barrel smoking faintly. The generator's dead, the scratches gone, and the basement still, too still, except for Lila's choked cries echoing off the walls. Ethan staggers up, grabbing his flashlight, the beam shaking as he sweeps it over Ellen's body, her chest carved up, one eye gone, throat a ragged mess. "We gotta go," he mutters, voice hoarse, stepping toward the stairs, Lila and Clara stumbling after him, shell-shocked. They creep up slow, the steps creaking under their weight. Ethan's light catching the library's ruin, doors splintered, walls gouged, those wet smears from Ruth and the others glistening fresh. Dawn's creeping in through the busted windows, a thin gray glow that softens the shadow's edge, giving them just enough slack to move. They hit the front, stepping over Jim's remains, his torso split, arm twisted back, Lila gagging as she clutches the truck tighter. Ellen's cruiser's parked out there, a dusty old Ford with the keys still in it, and they pile in, Ethan behind the wheel, Clara shotgun, Lila in the back, curling up small. The engine coughs to life with a low rumble, headlights flickering on, cutting through the copper-stinking air. Blood's everywhere, soaked into the ground, the walls, the night. Ethan peels out, tires crunching gravel, the library shrinking in the rearview as they barrel down Main. His phone buzzes in his pocket, a sharp jolt that makes him flinch. He fumbles it out, screen cracked but alive, and the words flash up. "Emergency alert, they are still here, run." His hands tighten on the wheel. "Damn it," slipping out under his breath, and he floors it, the engine growling louder. Lila's in the back, head leaning against the window, staring numb at the toy truck, red paint chipped, slick with her sweat. When she glances at the rearview mirror, something pulses there, a shadow, eyeless, its maw splitting wide, dripping black like tar. She freezes, breath catching, and feels it, a warm, wet brush against her neck, soft and slow, like a tongue testing her skin. "Ethan," she whispers, voice trembling, but he's already gunning it harder, the cruiser rattling as they tear out of Black Hollow, the last three left, thinking they've escaped, not knowing they've just fed that thing a ride. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more creepy stories. Stay safe, and see you in the next nightmare.